Have you ever felt rejected, judged, or broken by life? What if I told you that your struggles are not the end, but the beginning of something greater? This is Ayesha's story, a girl who prayed, fasted, and trusted Allah for 6 long years, and in the end, found peace and love far beyond her dreams. Don't give up hope. Allah's plan is perfect, and your time will come. If you need inspiration and guidance, subscribe to Deen in Minute and discover the stories that will strengthen your heart and soul. Click now and let your faith grow stronger, one story at a time. From rejection to divine blessing, Ayesha's 6-year struggle that changed everything. She sat at the corner of her bed, holding the Quran close to her chest, tears quietly streaming down her face. The dim light of her small room flickered as if it, too, felt her pain. 6 years had passed since the first time her parents had spoken about her marriage. 6 years of hopes built and hope shattered. 6 years of being judged, rejected, and blamed for reasons so small that they made no sense. Sometimes for her complexion, sometimes for her modest clothing, sometimes for her silence, and sometimes for things beyond her control. Her name was Ayesha, a girl of faith, whose life was woven with threads of salah and sabr. She was known among her neighbors as the girl who never missed a prayer, who fasted every Monday and Thursday with dedication, and whose lips always whispered verses of the Quran. Yet, her heart was heavy, carrying wounds no one else could see. Every week, a new proposal would come. Families would arrive, sip tea, ask questions, smile politely, and then disappear forever. The reasons for rejection were cruelly petty. One said her smile was too shy. Another complained that she wasn't modern enough. Another whispered that her dowry wasn't sufficient. Each rejection landed like a knife in her chest. But what broke her more was not the rejection itself. It was the way her father reacted. "Again, because of you," he would shout, slamming the door, his voice echoing through the walls. "You don't know how to talk. You don't know how to dress. You embarrass us every time. It's you and your mother's fault." Her mother would stay silent, lowering her head, swallowing her own grief. Her brother would avoid the conversation, pretending not to hear. And Ayesha would sit alone in her room, silently crying into her pillow, asking Allah in Tahajjud why her life was such a test. Yet, despite the pain, she never abandoned her Lord. She rose every night before far, placing her forehead on the cold mat, whispering through her tears, "Ya Allah, you are my wali. You are my guardian. If marriages care for me, then grant me a husband who will be the coolness of my eyes. If not, then give me patience and contentment." The years rolled by like waves crashing against rocks. Every time she thought this wave might carry her ashore, it broke and left her drowning again. Her heart began to weaken. She started to believe maybe she was unworthy. Maybe she was cursed. Maybe she would never have a home of her own. Her friends, one by one, got married, posting pictures with their husbands and babies, while she scrolled through her phone, silently battling envy and guilt. At weddings, people would look at her with pity, whispering behind her back, "Poor girl, still unmarried. Something must be wrong with her." But they didn't see the nights she spent awake, crying into the pages of the Quran. They didn't see the fasts she kept, the du'as she made, the hope she clung to even when her heart was breaking. They didn't see how much she tried to hold on to Allah's promise. Indeed, with hardship comes ease. Then came the day when her strength finally began to collapse. Another proposal had arrived, and with it, another rejection. This time, the man's family said she was too religious and would not fit into their lifestyle. Her father shouted at her in front of everyone, "You are a burden. Because of you, my head hangs in shame every week." His words were arrows piercing her soul. She wanted to scream that it wasn't her fault, that she was doing everything she could, that she was trying to be the daughter Allah wanted. But her voice choked. Silence was her only shield. That night, she prayed Tahajjud with trembling lips. But this time, her duo was different. It was not filled with hope or requests. It was filled with surrender. "Ya Allah, I am broken. If marriage is written for me, I accept. If not, I still accept. I have no power. I place everything in your hands." And with that, she cried until sleep took her. Weeks passed. Then one day, a proposal came, not from a wealthy family, not from a prestigious background, but from a man of very modest means. He worked as a driver, his income barely enough to sustain himself. He was not the dream husband her parents had once imagined. Her father was furious. "This is what we get after all these years. A driver? What will people say?" But Ayesha looked at her father with tired eyes. "Baba, after 6 years of rejection, after all the tears, after all the du'as, maybe this is what Allah has chosen for me. Maybe this is where my peace lies. Please don't refuse." Her father was silent for a long moment. His pride battled with his exhaustion. Finally, he said bitterly, "Fine, but don't expect anything from us. This is your decision." And so, after 6 years of waiting, Ayesha was married, not into wealth, not into status, but into simplicity. On her wedding night, she sat in the small rented room her husband had prepared, her hands trembling. Her husband entered, carrying 2 glasses of water. He placed one in front of her and said softly, "I don't have much, but I promise you one thing. I will never let you cry alone." Something inside her broke again, but this time it was not pain. It was relief. For the first time in years, she felt safe. She looked at him, and for the first time, she saw not rejection, not judgment, but acceptance. That night, as she lay in her new home, she realized the wisdom of Allah. For years, she had asked for ease, and Allah had tested her patience. For years, she had begged for love, and Allah had kept it away until she learned to depend on Him fully. And when she finally surrendered completely, Allah gave her someone who may not have had wealth, but who had a heart that feared Allah. Her story was not one of fairy tales with castles and riches. It was a story of sabr and dua, of pain and surrender, of falling down and getting up again. It was a story of a girl who was rejected by the world, but chosen by Allah. Days turned into months, and months into years, but Ayesha's heart never stopped holding onto the light of Allah's mercy. Even in her new life, with a husband of modest means, challenges continued, though now different from before. Her husband was kind, yet inexperienced in the ways of family responsibilities. They lived in a small, cramped house, where every corner reminded Ayesha of the life she had once dreamed of but had been denied. The whispers of relatives still echoed in her mind. Why didn't she marry someone better? Why settle for this? Yet Ayesha had learned something vital. True contentment comes not from the world, but from Allah. She woke before far, performing wudu in the quiet darkness, feeling the cool water cleanse not just her body but her soul. Her tahajjud became stronger, her du'as deeper, and she began to find joy in the smallest acts of obedience. She recited the Quran with a soft voice that trembled at the mercy of Allah, feeling each word etch itself into her heart. Sometimes, her thoughts wandered back to the 6 years of heartbreak. She remembered the endless rejections, the tears, the blame of her father, the silence of her mother, and the indifferent stares of her brother. Each memory was like a shadow, but instead of resentment, she felt gratitude. Gratitude for the patience she had cultivated, for the steadfastness that now defined her character, and for the understanding that Allah had a plan far beyond her imagination. Her husband, though modest in means, grew to admire her faith. He noticed her unwavering commitment to prayer, the way she fasted on Mondays and Thursdays, and the humility with which she treated everyone, even those who had judged her harshly. Slowly, he began to ask her to teach him, to recite the Quran together, and to pray beside her at night. Ayesha realized that her trials had not only purified her heart, but had also prepared her to be a source of guidance and inspiration. Still, the past was never far behind. Sometimes her father's words replayed in her mind. It's your fault. You are a burden. Sometimes, her heart ached seeing the success of her friends. But instead of falling into despair, she whispered to Allah in sujud, Ya Allah, if this is what you willed, I accept. Make my heart content, make my home a place of peace, and let my faith be stronger than my pain. Life, with its small struggles and hidden blessings, began to unfold in quiet ways. Her husband worked hard, saving each penny to provide even the smallest comforts. He had no grand promises to offer, no lavish gifts, no luxurious lifestyle, but he had sincerity, humility, and respect. And in the end, Ayesha realized that these qualities mattered far more than wealth, beauty, or social standing. Evenings were spent in the gentle glow of the lantern, where they would sit and share stories, laugh softly, and pray together. Ayesha discovered a peace she had never known, a love rooted not in desires or appearances, but in faith and mutual respect. She often reflected that Allah had given her not the life she had imagined, but the life she truly needed, a life where her heart could finally rest. Yet, the lessons of patience were far from over. Ayesha still faced societal pressure, her father's occasional harsh words, and the challenge of navigating a world that measured worth by superficial standards. But each challenge became a test of her steadfastness, a chance to grow closer to Allah. She no longer cried in despair but prayed with sincerity, finding solace in the promises of the Quran. Indeed, with hardship comes ease. Indeed, with hardship comes ease. One night, during Tahajjud, tears streamed down her face, not tears of pain, but of profound gratitude. She remembered every rejection, every humiliation, every bitter word, and she whispered softly, Alhamdulillah, Ya Allah. You never forsook me. You guided me when I was lost, and you answered my prayers when I had given up hope. Truly, you are the most merciful. Her heart felt lighter, her soul stronger. She realized that her 6-year struggle had not been wasted. Every rejection had been a step closer to the person she was meant to become. Every tear had purified her heart, and every prayer had been a bridge to Allah's mercy. She now understood a profound truth. Sometimes, what the world denies you is exactly what Allah is protecting you from. Ayesha's life became a quiet testimony of faith. Neighbors began noticing her serenity, the glow in her eyes, and the kindness in her actions. People whispered, Look at her. She has endured so much, yet she is peaceful. What is her secret? And she would smile softly, knowing that the secret was not her strength, but Allah's mercy and the unwavering trust she had placed in him. Even when difficulties arose, her husband's modest income, societal judgment, and family tensions, Ayesha faced them with patience. She would fast, pray, and read Quran, and she began to see that hardship was not a punishment, but a means of purification, a way to draw closer to Allah. Her struggles had taught her empathy, humility, and resilience, qualities that made her not just a good wife, but a good servant of Allah. And then, in the quiet moments of her new life, a realization dawned upon her. She understood that true success is not measured by social approval, wealth, or status, but by the depth of one's faith, the strength of one's character, and the serenity of one's soul. She had been rejected, judged, and misunderstood, yet here she was, living a life guided by Allah, surrounded by sincerity and love. And for the first time, she felt truly free. Ayesha's story became a silent inspiration. Young girls in her community began noticing her patience, her unwavering faith, and her courage. They would ask her for advice, and she would smile, sharing only one secret: depend entirely on Allah, pray sincerely, and never give up hope. Your time will come, and it will be better than your dreams. Her journey had been long, painful, and filled with uncertainties. But in the end, she realized that every rejection, every tear, and every trial had led her to a life of contentment, humility, and true faith. The girl who had once been broken by rejection now stood as a living testament to the mercy of Allah, the power of patience, and the beauty of surrender. Years continued to pass in that small, humble home, yet Ayesha's heart felt a lightness it had never known during her long struggle. Each day brought new challenges, yet she faced them with a serenity that puzzled those around her. Her husband, though limited in resources, became her companion in faith. Together they prayed, recited Quran, and fasted on Mondays and Thursdays, finding joy in small acts of devotion. Their home was simple, sometimes uncomfortable, yet overflowed with love built not on material wealth, but on mutual respect and Allah consciousness. Ayesha often thought of the 6 years she had spent being rejected. Those years, once a source of deep pain, now felt like sacred preparation. Every rejection had taught her endurance. Every insult had deepened her humility, and every tear had purified her soul. She realized that Allah had used the hardships not to punish her, but to shape her into a woman of unwavering faith, someone capable of recognizing and cherishing true goodness when it finally arrived. Even her father, who had once berated her endlessly, began to see a change in her. Though he still spoke with pride in his voice, there was a quiet respect now that hadn't existed before. He noticed how she managed her household with patience, how she treated her husband with love and fairness, and how she maintained her devotion despite hardship. Occasionally, he would mutter softly, "Perhaps Allah had a plan I could not see." And though he never fully apologized, Ayesha had long since forgiven him, understanding that his harshness had been rooted in pride and worry, not malice. Her husband, too, began to blossom under her guidance. Inspired by her steadfast faith, he grew more responsible, began to save diligently, and sought to deepen his own knowledge of Islam. Their bond strengthened with each passing day, built on trust, sincerity, and shared devotion. What had seemed like a meager, disappointing marriage at first now felt like a blessing she had never imagined. She often reflected that the life she had once longed for, the luxury, the status, the admiration of others, would never have brought her the peace she now experienced. Yet Ayesha's spiritual journey was far from complete. She continued to rise before far, performing Tahajjud with tears and whispers. Every night, she felt closer to Allah, sensing His presence in the quiet of her room, in the rustling of the leaves outside, and in the gentle rhythm of her own heartbeat. The du'as that had once been filled with desperation had now transformed into prayers of gratitude and surrender. Ya Allah, you know my heart. You know my path. Guide me, protect me, and accept me as your servant. One day, as she walked to the mosque, she overheard a young girl complaining to her mother about being unmarried. The girl's frustration mirrored the pain Ayesha once knew so intimately. Ayesha smiled softly and touched the girl's shoulder. "Patience, my dear," she said gently. "Trust in Allah. He knows what is best for you, and His timing is perfect. Never give up hope, and never lose your faith." Her words were simple, yet filled with the weight of experience. She became a quiet beacon of hope in her community, someone who had endured, prayed, and ultimately triumphed through faith. People began to approach her, seeking advice, guidance, and encouragement. And though she never boasted of her struggles, her story spoke volumes, inspiring others to hold on to patience and trust in Allah. Ayesha's life, though modest, had been transformed. The girl who had once been rejected repeatedly for 6 long years had grown into a woman of resilience, wisdom, and grace. Every hardship she had endured had been a stepping stone, every tear a purification, and every moment of despair a lesson in trust. She now understood the profound truth that Allah's plans are far beyond human comprehension, and that the mercy and wisdom of the Creator surpass all worldly desires. Her husband, who had once seemed like an unlikely companion, had become her partner in every sense, spiritually, emotionally, and morally. Together, they built a life of devotion, mutual respect, and quiet joy. Their home, though humble, radiated warmth and love, proof that true happiness is not found in riches, but in faith, patience, and sincere companionship. Even as she reflected on her past struggles, Ayesha felt no bitterness. Instead, she felt deep gratitude. Gratitude for the trials that had strengthened her, for the rejection that had prepared her, and for the divine wisdom that had guided her to the life she now cherished. She had learned that sometimes what the world refuses is exactly what Allah protects, and what seems like a disappointment is often a hidden blessing. In the quiet of her room, as she prayed Tahajjud and recited the Quran, she whispered softly, tears of joy mingling with whispers of faith, "Alhamdulillah, Ya Allah, you never forsook me. You guided me when I was lost, and you answered my prayers when I had given up hope. Truly, you are the most merciful." Her story became a living testament to the power of patience, prayer, and unwavering trust in Allah. It was a story of a girl who faced relentless rejection, endured harsh words and unfair blame, yet emerged stronger, wiser, and more faithful than ever. Ayesha's journey illustrated that true contentment comes not from worldly desires, but from surrendering to Allah's plan and trusting in His infinite wisdom. And in that surrender, she found peace, love, and fulfillment beyond anything she could have imagined. She had waited 6 long years, endured countless rejections, and faced endless struggles. But in the end, she realized that her persistence in dua, her devotion to prayer, and her steadfast trust in Allah had been her true strength. Years had passed since Ayesha first stepped into her modest home as a bride. Her hair had silvered slightly, her hands bore the gentle lines of responsibility, but her heart had grown immeasurably. Every hardship she had endured, every rejection she had faced, every tear she had cried, all of it had led her here. To a life of patience rewarded, faith deepened, and love realized. Her husband had matured alongside her, inspired by her unwavering devotion and her silent strength. Their home, once small and modest, was now filled with laughter, love, and respect. Neighbors would notice the warmth that seemed to emanate from their home, not in the form of wealth or decoration, but in the aura of peace and contentment that only faith can provide. Ayesha often thought of the girl she had once been, the one crushed under the weight of rejection, blamed for circumstances beyond her control, and lost in despair. And now, she saw that girl in a mirror, but also saw something else: resilience, grace, and the unshakable glow of a soul anchored in Allah. Even her father, once harsh and critical, softened with time. He saw in Ayesha a woman who had endured humiliation and heartbreak without losing her faith, who had grown stronger and more compassionate through every trial. Though words of apology were rarely spoken, his pride was now tempered with quiet admiration. And her mother, who had borne the silent pain of witnessing her daughter's struggle, finally smiled with relief, seeing her child find her place in Allah's plan. Ayesha's spiritual practices had become the pillars of her strength. Every Monday and Thursday, she fasted, pouring her intentions into her devotion. Her Tahajjud prayers, once whispered with desperation, were now recited with gratitude and love. Each verse of the Quran she read resonated deeply, a melody of divine guidance that lifted her heart and reminded her that Allah's timing is perfect, His wisdom infinite. She often reflected on the 6 years of struggle, remembering the countless proposals that ended in rejection, the sharp words of her father, and the stinging sense of isolation. And yet, she no longer felt bitterness or regret. Instead, she felt a profound gratitude for every trial that had shaped her. She understood now that Allah had tested her not to break her, but to elevate her, to prepare her heart to recognize true goodness when it appeared, and to teach her that reliance on Him alone is the path to true contentment. One night, during Tahajjud, she whispered her final prayers for the day, her forehead touching the mat in surrender. Ya Allah, thank you for every hardship, every tear, every rejection. Thank you for guiding me to a life of peace, love, and faith. Make me always grateful, patient, and steadfast in your path. Her heart felt full, her soul at peace. The girl who had once cried in silent despair had become a woman who inspired others to hope. Young women in her community would seek her guidance, asking how to remain patient through trials, how to maintain faith when the world seems unfair. And Ayesha would smile, telling them simply, pray, fast, read Quran, trust Allah. Your time will come, and it will be better than your dreams. Ayesha's journey was a living testament to the power of dua, patience, and unwavering faith. It illustrated that even when the world rejects you, Allah's plan is perfect. That even when hearts are broken and dreams deferred, divine wisdom works silently to bring one to true contentment. And that the most precious blessings often arrive not with fanfare, but quietly in the form of love, peace, and faith that cannot be measured by worldly standards. As she sat by the window, the moonlight illuminating her serene face, Ayesha whispered a final thought into the night. Ya Allah, I am yours in hardship and in ease. Let my life be a testimony of your mercy and guide others through my story. Her life had been transformed not through wealth, status, or recognition, but through patience, prayer, and complete reliance on Allah. And in that transformation, she found not just marriage, not just companionship, but true peace, a peace that no rejection, no blame, and no worldly measure could ever take away.